Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker. Our modern age, saturated with technology, constant cynicism, streamlined digital communication, heavy negativity, relationship status posts, and instant information access, has shaped the way many young people deal with the pressure points of life. With the unique set of pressures students experience in their transition to college, more young adults are struggling with purpose, relationships, failure, community, and isolation than ever before. Author and college ministry leader Shelby Abbott believes that while technology in itself isn't to blame, it forces real issues to surface in the lives of young men and women. His new release aims to confront many of these struggles, big or small, in light of the gospel. With 20 years of experience in college ministry, including performing stand-up comedy for college audiences, he meets readers where they are in a memorable, poignant, and humorous, when appropriate way, all while unpacking biblical solutions to life's pressures. Shelby Abbott is an author, campus minister, and conference speaker on staff with the Ministry of Cru. His passion for university students has led him to speak at college campuses all over the United States. He is the author of Jacked and I Am a Tool to Help Your Dating Life. He and his wife Rachel have 2 daughters and live in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. Readers can find him online at shelbyabbott.com. Here to discuss his latest release is Pressure Points, a guide to navigating student stress, is Shelby Abbott. Shelby, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Thank you, Rabbi. It's great to be here.
Great to have you here. What a great topic, navigating the stressors of a college student's life. Immeasurable, innumerable, as many of the issues that an adult struggles with in their faith journey. It's almost quantum, exponentially, multidimensionally more complex as you deal with this change in hormones, change in brain structure, change in social relationships, and moving from the cage called home to the free reign of the world with absolutely no boundaries whatsoever in place. And it's a recipe for disaster for some and for great opportunities for others.
Yeah, I agree.
So in your case, let's take a look at you. Let's go all the way back and take a look at your faith journey and what your influences were and how you navigated early on in life, finding faith and finding a faith that could be your own and no longer the faith of your parents.
Right. Yeah, it was an interesting environment for me. I came from a broken home. My mother and father divorced when I was 3. My mom remarried to my stepdad, who I call my dad, when I was 6, and he was in the military. And so I became an Air Force brat overnight. I was born in California, and not too long after they got married, we moved to North Dakota. And then on average, about every 2 years, we moved to a new location, mostly in the States, but we spent 2 years in Guam. And if you're familiar at all with the military lifestyle, we would go to church on Sundays, but it would be a military-based chapel. And they essentially have 2 services for Christians. One is the Catholic service, and one is the Protestant service. And so we went to the Protestant service, which was a couple small steps away from a Catholic service. And so it was very just kind of by the books for me. It was something that we did on a Sunday morning, but it wasn't really anything that we talked about or let affect our daily lives as a family. Flash forward to high school, it was a kind of a formative time for me because I was in one school my freshman year in Virginia. My sophomore year, we moved to Alabama, which is where you're at right now.
Right.
We were in Montgomery, and then my junior year, we moved to Great Falls, Montana. And then my senior year, my parents and my sister moved away to Panama, Central America, and I stayed behind and lived with a different family so I could graduate in the States and not go to a 4th high school in 4 years. So it was change upon change upon change upon change. And then after I graduated in Montana, I ended up spending the summer in Panama with my parents, with my family. And then I went to Virginia Tech my freshman year. And college was the type of environment where I kind of had heard the rumors. I knew what college was kind of going to be about. And I just decided that I didn't want to live the party lifestyle. Again, for me, Christianity was mostly just a religious thing that I did. And I felt like if I was good enough and better than the person next to me, then God would view me in a positive light and uh, basically let me into heaven. It was kind of just a way to punch my own ticket. And so I got involved with Crew pretty quickly my freshman year because I wanted to go to a Bible study and not do the other college things that a lot of people did. And for the first time, I really understood what it meant to have a relationship with God as opposed to just being religious. And I kind of battled back and forth with God through most of the first semester of my freshman year. And then January, during my freshman year, I went to a large group meeting where someone explained the gospel from up front, and I had heard it many, many times before, but for some reason it just clicked then in a different way for me. And I was like, well, I've never actually made this decision before. So I left the meeting early while they were singing praise and worship songs. I went down to the men's bathroom down the hall, and I pulled out this little gospel presentation that was in my wallet, actually. I flipped to the back because I knew the whole thing already, and I prayed the prayer that was written in there and said, Lord, I'm tired of pretending. Will you come into my life and make me the kind of person you want me to be? In a men's bathroom. So I always say it's not sexy. My story is not sexy, but it's a good picture about where God chooses to meet us, because there's nothing filthier than a men's public restroom. And God met me in a men's room and plucked me out of my filth, my religious filth, and brought me into a relationship with Him then. And ever since, it's been an amazing ride that God has brought me on. So that's kind of the long version. Sorry if that was a little bit boring.
No, Shelby, it actually opened my mind to a couple things, and one is that coming from a military background, there's the deconstruction of home and the inability to put down deep roots, but there's also a certain structure within the fluidity of this lifestyle, and there's a world system that you plug into. Your mom plugged into.
Yeah.
She plugged into it with other mothers. She plugged into the system with the relocation units that all are there. It's very fluid. It's very structured, and it was presented in a way to you and your family. This is what you were. This is what you did. It wasn't abnormal for you because you weren't comparing yourself to the other kids. You knew this was the lifestyle, this was the groove you were in, and that it was for you. You understood things were for a season.
Yeah.
That's an incredibly deep spiritual truth that most people don't get to until they mature in the Lord. You are being delivered spiritual truths about the God of order, about seasons, about being instant in season, out of season, dealing with change, disruption, fluidity of relationship dynamics, how to be and identify with yourself to who you were, because you had to reintroduce that person every year or every 2 years. And this made you somewhat of a self-evangelist, tapping into self-evangelism. I have to present me as like the gospel message. I have to present me everywhere I go because nobody knows me. And so I'm an apologetist, I'm an evangelist, I'm an apostle. There's all these things being developed in you that have nothing to do with a faith journey until you connect all the dots and realize it had everything to do with the faith
Yeah.
journey, and that this was God's equipping and this is God's preparing, and it's all in the perspective of what God was doing in that season of preparation. And quite honestly, I would say that if I were to look at today's prayer closet, the bathroom, the men's room, the ladies' room is probably the closest version we have, because I'm sure more prayers are offered up in the privacy, whether or not it's in the confines of a stall in tears, because you're at work and you're overwhelmed with the life and the challenges, and you go to the ladies' room or the men's room and you close the door and at least you have some privacy. There's probably more conversations going on with God in that closet than maybe in any other closet. So there is something about going off into a place, at least you know nobody's going to be striking up a casual conversation with you. So
Yeah, I agree.
So it's a very interesting story from a spiritual dynamics, how God prepares you for seasons, and then you get called. So you say the prayer, you come back into the meeting after saying the prayer, and what changes, what dimension do you move from, and then what dimension do you move into, and how did that shape your future?
Yeah, it was funny. Immediately after I prayed to receive Christ, I left the men's room and I walked down the hall, and the guy who led my Bible study, this crew staff guy, was standing there getting ready for people to start coming out. And I looked at him and said, "Hey, Dave, I just want you to know that I just prayed to receive Christ." And he was like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I thought you had already done that." And I said, "No, I hadn't." And so he was with me from the beginning on my journey, and instrumental in my life in a number of different ways. Those beginning formative years of not only becoming a more mature Christian, but becoming a man as opposed to a boy. And I like kind of like you were saying, I can look back on my experiences as a military kid, and God really used that to shape me into the person I am today. So I don't look back on it with regret. It was difficult to go through at the time, of course, but I look back on it and say, you know, those formative years, growing up and moving all the time, gave me the ability to communicate in better ways than maybe some of my peers did. Find the humor in things that people can't find humor in. Perfect the art of casual chit-chat. Like things like that are more tools in my belt than maybe many other people had received before. So the changes that would happen with me, spiritually at least, over the next 3 years or so, 3.5 years of college, were slow, subtle, but there was a new profound sense of freedom that I had in a way that I'd never felt before. Because if it wasn't about my performance and it was all about his performance on the cross, then number one, I didn't have to work so hard anymore at being a believer, which is what I was doing before, just working and working and working. And then, you know, verses like in Galatians where it says, you know, you foolish Galatians, are you trying to perfect now what was given to you for free, basically? Why are you trying to add religion onto your relationship? And so it became new to me. The Holy Spirit illuminated scriptures in ways that I'd never seen before. And one in particular moment with Dave, the following year after I became a Christian, we were in that same hallway right outside the meeting room. And I said something to him, and to make him laugh, and he laughed really hard, and then he paused and got kind of serious, and he looked me right in the eyes, and he was like, "Shelby, you've got so much stinking potential if you would just live up to it." And at the moment, it was like, ugh, that kind of hurts. It felt like a gut punch, but at the same time, what he was doing is seeing something in me and saying, hey, the bar has been here for you. Let me go ahead and raise it and say, you know what, I think you can jump, and I think you can clear it. But nobody really had ever challenged me in that way before. And I look back on that, and as a watershed moment for me, not only as like, hey, I can make an impact in this world in a way that I'm not currently doing, and he believes in me, and I could grow and do phenomenal things for the Lord if I'm willing to jump higher. And so, yeah, that was my sophomore year. Junior year was more growth and development, and then my senior year, it was kind of a no-brainer for me to come on staff with Crew. It just was one of those things. God had used the ministry of Crew to pour so much into my life, and the harvest is plentiful, the laborers are few. I wanted to be one of those guys who was a laborer. It just felt clear to me, and pretty easy decision. So as soon as I graduated, I came around on staff with Crew, and I've been on staff ever since. So, like you said, 20 years.
It's an incredible blessing when you have a mentor like Dave.
Yeah.
When you have somebody that you can be accountable to and can challenge you. So you're navigating this faith journey, but you're also still navigating an academic pressure. You're navigating a social pressure. Did you find yourself set apart and mostly Crew kind of people were in your sphere? Is this where you met Rachel? Is this where you were introduced to the concept of dating? Had you dated much before? Having lived here and lived there, and it's hard to be the new guy, especially when prom time comes. It seems to be just a tough time for the new guy.
Yeah. College was, I think this is one of the reasons why I chose college ministry. It was just so much happened for me in college, and I became a believer in college. I'm short. I'm 5'6" as a 42-year-old man, and when I graduated from high school, I looked like I was 12, and so girls just never really gave me the time of day at all in high school, and so I didn't date. I did go to the prom, but I went with a friend, and so I did go out on dates, but I didn't date anyone. And so when I got to college, and I recognized that I do have a personality that is attractive to women, and I could be an option for girls. I did start dating in college. I grew and developed in a number of different ways there. I really, the core group of my friendships were within Crew, yes. My junior year, I came to the realization that only the people who I would call my friends were just Christians, and I wanted to change that. And so I got a job on campus so I could, with the purpose of meeting non-believers and learning how to share my faith in a practical way, which I love doing. I worked at the on-campus Chick-fil-A, like any good Christian would do.
Right.
Yeah. And I loved it because I worked with a bunch of non-believing men and women who got to know me and then eventually invited me to their parties where I would go and be the designated driver and not drink. And I'd bring my guitar along and play songs for them while they were drinking, and they loved me. So they would always appreciate that I would be the designated driver as well, because when I go back to work during the week, they say, hey, thanks for driving us around. I really appreciate that. I'm like, I'm just glad you remember that I was there. And so none of those people that I worked with over those 2 years on campus indicated decisions to come to Christ. But my bet is that they were able to, at least in their future, when they ran into another Christian, say, you know what, there was this little kid that I worked with back in college who is a really nice guy, and he never judged me or condemned me, but he was a believer because I knew where he stood. And I don't know those stories now, but I'm prayerful that they have happened. I didn't meet my wife Rachel in college. I met her when I came on staff with Crew. She was a student where I was on staff full time at James Madison University in Virginia. And so there's a 7-year age gap between me and Rachel, which single staff guy dating a student was a little bit scandalous at the time. But I asked my leader there, Dan, I said, what do you think about this? And he said, honestly, bro, if your head hits the pillow at night and the Holy Spirit is not convicting you that this is wrong, who am I to stand in the way of that? And so everybody who knew me and knew her thought it was a good match. There were a few people that thought it was weird because there was such a large age gap at that time, at that period of time. But if anyone knew us, they knew that the relationship would work. Plus, I always like to say she was. I'm way older than her, but she's way more mature than me, so it just kind of worked out that way. Yeah. So she was a sophomore when we started dating, and when she graduated in '06, we got married, and she came on staff like 3 weeks after we got back from our honeymoon. So yeah, we've been on staff together ever since.
You know, at 42 and 35, it's not a big deal. But
Right
at,
now, yeah.
but at 12 and 19, it's huge.
Yeah, it's creepy then. Yeah, it's not appropriate then. And when we started dating, she was 19, I was 27. So she eventually turned 20 in the next month, but yeah, at the time it was like, wow, this is a big difference. But again, she was way more mature than me, so it worked out well.
Understand. You know, it's interesting because you don't talk much about the pressures of fitting in. And, you know, you're kind of a package, 5'6", sold out for the Lord, designated driver, working pretty steady Eddie. Doesn't sound like any of these worldly things were very attractive to you. Why do you think that you had a different lens to look at these normal distractions in a way that said that they're just not appealing to me? I just don't find them attractive. What was it about them that you didn't find attractive, that if we look at it from that perspective, maybe it'll help us understand why some people find that so extraordinarily attractive?
Yeah, I think kind of what you hinted at earlier, that the God was working in my life even when the Holy Spirit was not in my heart. So he was preparing ways for me. And so it's bizarre because religion is very dangerous if it's just religion and you don't actually have a relationship with God. But religion is what kept me from the partying lifestyle that first semester of my freshman year. The guys who lived next door to me in my dorm were really, really fun and funny guys. And if I had not been well, no, it's morally wrong to do this, I would have totally fallen into that kind of lifestyle of drinking and partying and sex and stuff like that. It was one of those things that I can look back on and say, this is just the grace of God. It was nothing more than that. I was impressionable. I was, I could be pressured into doing things like any other person gets pressured into doing things. It was just one of those things that I think God set apart for me, and I don't look back on that and go, wow, I missed out on so much life and fun, because my life has been incredible and fun. Working with college students full time is always exciting. It's never boring, and I look back on it and I'm thankful. I'm not like, man, I missed out on my opportunity to be rebellious or whatever. It just wasn't like that for me. And I'm thankful for that. You know, that's one of the things I hope for my daughters, who are very young right now. So, but you never know how life is going to be. But at least I was able to understand and experience what it meant to not live a partying lifestyle. I was a virgin when I got married. That's a very rare thing. But I praise God for that. I don't go, man. I've seen the other side. I can see the other side. I work full-time with college students. I know what the other side looks like. And so I don't look at it with envy or a sense of longing for what could have been, but I look at it as an element of God's grace in my life.
Well, certainly you've walked out a very interesting path, and of course your commitment to the Lord would keep you from becoming the guy that shaves his legs on stage in front of a large group of people.
Yeah.
Or is that something you actually did?
Yeah, that is something I actually did. Yeah, that was a good softball little comment for you. I'll swing. My sense of humor developed quite a bit in college as well, and I felt like I really had a voice in a way that I just never did before when I was younger, and I found that I could relate really well to college students. And so early on in my staff career, I was asked to be the MC of two separate conferences: our winter conference that happens um, right after Christmas every year and draws presently around 1,200 college students. And then this other conference called Big Break down in Panama City Beach, Florida, which was a spring break evangelism conference. And so I went to it as a student, where you basically go down to Panama City Beach with a bunch of Cru students from all over the nation. You get trained and motivated on how to share your faith in the morning and evening meetings. And then during the day, you go out onto the beach and share your faith with partying spring breakers. And that was one of those things that was terrifying, but also extremely formative. It galvanized me in my heart for sharing the gospel and being around college students, because it sounds scary, but truth be told, drunk college students will talk to you about anything. So it's actually really easy to share the gospel with students that way. And that environment down in Panama City Beach, since it is a spring break, requires a lot of energy in the main meetings in the ballroom. And so when they asked me to MC that conference, which used to draw at around 3,200 college students from all over the nation over the course of a few weeks, and I just loved honing my skills in being able to connect with college students and let them know, hey, I'm a normal human being. I understand pop culture. I understand the music that's out there right now. I understand what you're going through, what you hear on a daily basis, but I also know what it means to draw a line and live in a way that honors Jesus, that can go deep theologically, that can talk about the realities of what it means to struggle with doubt, to struggle with frustration, anxiety, fear, all of those kind of things in an honest way that brings glory to Jesus. And so when I was emceeing that conference one year, the idea was to get a bunch of females to commit to shave their legs if I shaved my legs. And so, yeah, I shaved. I had a bunch of girls teach me how to shave my legs, and it took a lot longer to grow back than I thought it would. So I was like, it'll be back. And I was like, facial hair grows back really fast. I think it'll be back in like 2 weeks. It took I think 2 months for my leg hair to come back, which I was like, I'll never do this again. But whatever makes them happy.
Right. There you go. We're talking with Shelby Abbott, author of the new book, Pressure Points, A Guide to Navigating Student Stress. Student stress is real, and as parents, I know that you're thinking about your graduating college student, your graduating high school student, what lies ahead for them, how they're going to be prepared. Did you do what you were supposed to do when you had the opportunity to do it? Or are they getting ready to walk into something that there's just no way you could have prepared them for, and you need to understand some of the stresses that are coming their way in order to be equipped to welcome them back home for spring break, for the summer break, or for whatever period of time that you are able to influence them and convince them or encourage them to connect in a way. There's so many pressures, from dating to the pressures of performance, competition, both from a financial and a academic perspective, that the stress today is different than the stress was back in the 50s and 60s, and late 60s and early 70s when I graduated from college. So we are going to dig deep into the content of Pressure Points, A Guide to Navigating Student Stress, right after this short break. Not everything that makes the headlines has biblical importance, but many events that happen around the world do, and you never hear about them. Igniting a Nation is pleased to teach Revealing Prophecy every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. at the Marriott 280 in Birmingham. We will cover worldwide events and insider information that will connect the dots of what's happening around the world with biblical prophecy. If you happen to miss a class, we'll televise each week's class at 10 o'clock Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our social media outlets. Copies of the teachings will also be available to purchase on our website at www.ignitinganation.com. The Lord meets you right where you are, and so does Igniting a Nation's new live streaming outlets. You can now watch Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible, and Prophecy Revealed simulcast live each Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Vimeo, Periscope, and through our website, www.ignitinganation.com. No matter what device you are using, our program will automatically scale so you won't have to miss a single program. And if you happen to miss an episode, you can always subscribe to the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel and access over 1,000 interviews and never miss your favorite authors, special guests, and topics that interest you the most.
There are lots of ways to see Israel, but nothing compares to seeing the land of the book and the people of the book through the eyes of two Jewish believers who can take you on a journey that will bring the entire Bible to life. When you join Rabbi Eric Walker and his #1 rated tour guide, Edo Canaan, in Israel, you'll experience incredible teachings, first-class accommodations, and actually walk where Jesus walked. You will experience the Bible transforming from black and white into living color, and you will never see the Bible in the same way again. For more information, visit us at www.ignitinganation.com/events.
The Lord contends with what contends with you, and Igniting a Nation is committed to bringing to light each and every issue that faces a believer's life. Our live stream programming and teachings take you on a journey to finding biblical truth from a wide variety of experts who share their insights into a deeper walk with the Lord. We have assembled the most comprehensive panel of experts in the fields of prophecy, caregiving, healing from trauma, shame, and abuse, and so much more. We continue to expand our teachings and programming to meet your needs. We're committed to healing the nations with biblical truth. Visit www.ignitinganation.com to develop a deeper walk with the Lord and start your journey to a transformed life. The Bible commands us to study to show ourselves approved, but most study using Bible study tools and not actually studying the Bible chapter and verse. Igniting a Nation is pleased to present Revealing the Bible, recorded and taught each week before a live audience. We take you deeper into the actual Bible and verse in both Hebrew and English and connect the dots between the Old and New Testament. You can attend our 2 classes in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, or watch the program every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our other simulcast outlets. For more information, visit www.ignitinganation.com/events. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking to Shelby Abbott, author of Pressure Points, a guide to navigating student stress. Shelby, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Rabbi. Good to be here.
You know, Shelby, you and I had very unique college experiences. I went to college at age 16. I knew nothing. And I had it was overwhelming on a campus of 55,000 students. They ultimately wound up becoming the vice president of the student body at Penn State 3 years later, which is quite an oddity. But there are things that motivate students. A lot of it is fear-based, isn't it? A lot of the stresses that students are facing come from a negative place, and fear of missing out, fear of something passing by. There's so many pressures. How do you help navigate this in the book?
Yeah, the truth is that anxiety and fear is on the rise in a way that is really unprecedented. And a lot of that has to do, I mean, there's a lot of research that's been done has to do with the advancement of technology and the fact that everybody has a smartphone now. When 2007 hit and the iPhone came out, everything changed. And as a result, there's been a lot of great benefits from that, but also a lot of harmful ones as well. And so fear and anxiety are on the rise, and there's a direct correlation between that and the technology that we have with internet streaming into our pockets all the time, 24 hours a day. And so what I noticed was that there are things that were quote-unquote common that almost every college student deals with that are being amplified, and the struggles, I mean, are being amplified and ramped up in a way that have not been addressed, talking about the element of technology, social media, instant access, information access, all of that kind of stuff. And so I really felt like I wanted to write a book to myself if I were a college student today, and the things that I would wrestle with. So in the book, I do talk about the average things, a survey of the average things that a college student deals with in light of our modern society, our modern age, but point them to honest, real, biblical solutions, because while the scriptures are silent on things like smartphones and internet access because it didn't exist back then, biblical principles and biblical thinking can be applied to those specific pressure points that they wrestle with today. So it's always important to ask the question behind the question. So whenever there's an issue, like I'm struggling with the fear of missing out, for example, I'm wrestling with FOMO because I see my friends on Instagram. They live these perfect lives. They're doing things without me, and I can tell that it's happening right now without me. I haven't been invited. Will I live up to the way that other people look, the way the kind of grades that other people get, all of that kind of stuff. Saying, why is this a struggle? Why is my phone a struggle? Well, the issue is not necessarily your phone. Your phone has just thrust that issue to the surface in your life. So fear, anxiety, pain, anger, lots of different things like that are pushed to the surface because of technology. So technology is not necessarily to blame. It's just something that has revealed the issues of the sinful heart in a way that nothing else has before. So I wanted to talk very practically. I'm a very practical person, but give gospel solutions to answer the question behind the question. So what's really going on in a person's heart isn't necessarily on the surface their phone or the issues of their phone. It's the fact that they're not connecting with the solution to their problems, the real solution to their problems in the person of Jesus Christ, and how that is not manifesting itself via their smartphone, for example. So that's what I really try to do.
So the awareness of these struggles, is this a toolkit for students? Is this a toolkit for parents? Is this a resource that as people were thinking about going into student ministry, that they should grab a hold of and say, if I dive into student ministry, this is what it's going to look like. These are the things I'm going to contend with. Who was the audience that you were addressing this to as you were writing to yourself? Did you see college students, did you see small groups using this as a guide? Did you see this being something that crew would incorporate into their curriculum as part of making students aware of what's behind their issues?
Yeah, primarily I wrote it to college students. So I want college students to be the primary audience because it's addressing the issues that they deal with on a daily basis. That being said, it's also a good resource for late high school students who are getting ready to approach the college world. And I think it's good if you're a parent or a grandparent of someone who is that target age to be able to get it for your college student or high school student, but also read it yourself, because it's kind of fun sometimes to be able to peer over the shoulder of someone, metaphorically speaking, not really, but peer over their shoulder and see what they're going through, what they experience, and relate to the complexity of it, because we view our own opinions about college students through our news intake or the stereotypes that we think are out there when it comes to college students. But the reality is it's much more nuanced than that. And so I think what I tried to do in working with college students for so long is communicate to them. So there's very specific stuff in the book that there's 3 sections: the pressure of finding purpose, the pressure of relationships, and the pressure of dealing with difficulty. And so when it comes to very, very specific issues that college students wrestle with, the relationships one is kind of the most college-centric, because you're talking about dating, you're talking about relationship with your parents, you're talking about friendships that you're developing over the course of being in a university or college. The other principle is purpose and difficulty. We talk about things like suffering, spiritual warfare. There is FOMO in there as well. And then the overarching kind of more grand stuff that we ask ourselves, like, what does God want me to do? What is my purpose? Does God, I know the Bible says that God loves me, but does God really like me? Like, does he want to be in relationship with me? Like me as a person? Those kind of things. And those subjects are universal. They are applicable to everyone. And so if you want to get to know your college student or high school student, as an older person, as a parent or grandparent, this would be a great resource to purchase and kind of peer into the window of what it's like to live as a young person on a campus. But certainly for student ministry, I prepared this. There's, after the end of every chapter, there are 3 reflection questions that you could use to personally write in the book or journal things out. Or type them into your phone if you want to. But it's also a good way to maybe go deeper in a small group context. It's not, I wouldn't call it a Bible study per se. There are areas where it points to Scripture and says, hey, reread this part of Scripture and then talk about this. So I'd hesitate to call it a Bible study, but it could be a great discussion for a Bible study to do supplemental to your study of the Scriptures, and really talk about real things like pornography, dating, drinking, what it means to feel the pressure of living the Christian life as a college student in a way that your non-believing students around you they simply don't understand. There's almost added pressure because of being a Christian. And again, through the lens of technology and social media as well, which makes everything more complicated.
We tend to look at the college campus as a cesspool of temptation. You send your child off to a place hoping that you've raised them properly, you think you've done the right things, but this is kind of the testing, this is kind of the first venture into the wilderness that they're going to have, unless they've gone off on mission trips or have been really connected with a youth group. This may be the place that they find themselves, find the Lord, find that they have issues that are really coming under scrutiny in a social setting, because college is a social experience in an academic setting. So it's 2 worlds. I've got to perform academically in order to stay in, but I also want to enjoy the freedoms that I have that I didn't have living under mom and dad's roof. Right. Maybe there's such a thing called balance, but we don't talk about this balanced life, this balanced existence, and how do you navigate physical attractions? How do you navigate isolation? You don't fit in. You're the youngest, the shortest, the nerdiest, whatever it is that you think you are. Your self-esteem is now going to be tested. High school, you had it handled. You figured it out maybe in your sophomore year. By your senior year, you had it you had it down pat. But now you're getting ready to jump out into the bigger pool, and you get hit with things that you didn't expect, you didn't see. How do we support? How do we? This is a tool for the student. What are the expected, anticipated, highest percentage temptations that they're going to deal with when they enter college?
Yeah, it's funny. You're communicating this clearly, and obviously people don't experience everything the way that, for example, you and I did. You went to Penn State. I went to Virginia Tech. I had 26,000 students when I was there, so it was a big university. Yours was even bigger at Penn State, but not everybody goes through that. Some people go to community college. Some people go to very small colleges where their class sizes are extremely small, and so there's not like, I hesitate to give blanket statements about what every college student goes through. That being said, you are coming into your own. You're not, if you go to a meeting that's not required, you're going to it because you actually want to be there. You're not going there because your mom and dad are telling you to go there, which is actually what I've loved about college ministry on a secular campus, is that when students would show up, they weren't told to be there. They actually wanted to be there. And so that obstacle, that first hurdle to get over was already there, was already gone. And so I like that about being at a secular university. The temptations are, I mean, they are there. There's temptation to excessively binge drink. There's temptation to engage in sexually promiscuous relationships with people. There is temptations to do anything that you would think that what college students would want to do to have fun. That temptation is there. Yes, it is. However, me coming to faith in college, it was a genuine decision, and Jesus met me my freshman year, and my life was forever changed. That happened in the context of a campus ministry at Virginia Tech, a secular university. And when I would take a religion class later on, it was being taught by a secular university of someone who was not believing in the authority of Scripture. And so it was opportunity to challenge my faith, but also extreme opportunities to grow my faith. Just like anything else, to get stronger, you need to break things down in order to build them back up. And so wrestling with doubts every now and then, wrestling with challenges to my faith, wrestling with what it meant to share my faith, those kind of things were galvanizing, and they made the faith muscles in my heart stronger. And so it was one of those things that I look back on and I'm like, I had a lot of people to share the gospel with. If I weren't at a secular university and I didn't have a bunch of partying people around me all the time, I wouldn't have many people to talk to. And that prepared me in many ways for a life of ministry. So yeah, it can be scary, and I think the natural inclination for a parent is to want to shelter your child, to want to protect your child from those kind of things. But, I mean, we cannot do that forever. My kids right now are young, 8 and 5. And so already they're hearing things and asking questions about what they've heard just on the school bus. And I'm like, well, I would much rather be involved in the process than say, don't pay any attention to that, because I can't shelter them forever. Those conversations are going to happen. I would rather them do that with me and my wife in the context of a biblical worldview, as opposed to them hearing it from their friends or people at their school, and getting it through a worldly viewpoint. So one day my daughters are going to go to college, and there's nothing I can do about that. They're going to grow up. Maybe they won't go to college, but they're going to grow up, and there's nothing I can do about that. So what can I do to prepare them to be in love with Jesus more than the world? And ultimately, the decision is up to them, but of course, it's under the sovereignty of God.
When you faced temptation, you had the strength and the strength of character to resist. There are many who find this as the getaway. They go there with the intention that I'm going to experience. I have a 30-year-old daughter. who said to me, you know, Dad, you grew up in the 60s. You tried everything, you did everything, you were the generation that learned everything. And you know, you have to give me some space to experience. I said, and I would, my response to her is that you can learn great wisdom from the bad experiences of others. You don't have to experience it yourself. I can certainly tell you many of the pitfalls, but yet she was one of those that, regardless of how much guidance and direction that was given, still went out to experience it herself because she had the latitude and the freedom to do that. And I don't know that there was much to do. There's personality traits. There's strong wills. There are things, but she is a believer. It's between her and the Lord how she's living that out.
Right.
I can only continue to encourage her every day. Pastor kids, rabbi kids, they have certain nuances, and there's things that impact them and they process differently. Military kids do as well.
Yeah.
From your perspective, how open do you think college students really are to an authentic encounter with the Lord and would be open to hearing about it?
I think now in our culture today is a time unlike any other in terms of openness. I think people are willing to talk to you about spiritual things in a way that they weren't even when I was in college in the late 90s. You would say God then, and they'd be like, prove it. Now you say God, and while many, I'd say most, have a warped view of who God really is, as He's revealed to us in the Scriptures, but there's not a lot of closed doors on the initial part of the conversation. Many people are open to talking about spiritual things with you, and then think, especially in America, they think they know who Jesus is, but then when you describe the true biblical Jesus to them, that's when they're like, oh, I didn't realize that, I didn't understand that, or you're willing to engage in conversation with people and not be judgmental of who they are, like expecting them to be moral before they become a Christian is silly. It's silly to think that, because I was not moral, even though I was super moral in comparison to anyone, but my heart was full of pride. So in effect, I was very immoral before I came to Jesus. So I think we have a tendency as Christians to judge people from the outside, but if you're willing to move into conversations to say, hey, there's equal footing at the foot of the cross. We're all on the same level. It's by sheer grace that God accepts us through the sacrifice of His Son on the cross. Then you're willing to look at that and go, well, of course they're partying and searching after things for fulfillment. Of course they are. Why wouldn't they? If they don't have Jesus, they don't know fulfillment. They're throwing stuff into the void of their heart to try to fill it, and it will never be filled until Christ comes and fills that. So, yeah, I think there's a scariness, especially on a college campus, when you look at it, of like, oh, could it be like this? I don't want to do. But it's really fun. It's really quite easy too. So.
We've been talking with Shelby Abbott, author of the new book, Pressure Points, A Guide to Navigating Student Stress. I'm encouraged. I'm incredibly encouraged to hear that there's an open dialogue going on college campuses today. And there's people like Shelby Abbott who are equipped to guide and to navigate students away from the stresses that they have to face, and giving them real solutions to real problems, and that they're open to hear it. And that's very encouraging to me. Maybe we've shied away, we've labeled or assumed that college kids just want to have a good time, and that's not really a fertile ground for the harvest. But you hear firsthand Shelby's 20 years experience, and he is the product of a campus ministry, and that as your kids come home from college, that here's an opportunity for you to understand some of the stresses. Your youth pastor for him as he's preparing them for the college years, can be addressing many of these things in their high school years, in preparing them and talking about it and beginning to help them navigate it in anticipation of what they're going to face. And so the book has multiple applications within your life. And so I want to strongly encourage you to use this as a great resource for reaching those that are preparing for college or in college. And Shelby Abbott, we thank you so very much for you being on the program with us.
My pleasure, Rabbi. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. God bless you. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.